All right, good morning and welcome everybody. This is University Schools sharing learning opportunities with our school and the greater public through this crazy time that we're going through now. And today we're fortunate to have Captain Dan Cleveland from the Spirit of South Carolina. He's been all over the Atlantic and Africa and South Pacific and Europe, and been in all ships for a long time. And he's doing maintenance today. I think the ship's about 15 years old or so. And looking forward to his sharing what they're up to in the Charleston Harbor right now. And many thanks to the Charleston Convention Center and Visitors Bureau for helping make this special opportunity possible. We're hoping that talking about it today, that when things settle down, that we'll all go out and go on the Spirit and visit it and support it and enjoy our special maritime culture. Thanks, Captain Dan. I'm turning it over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Jason. I'm more than happy to share Spirit with y'all. Obviously, this is my office. I hope the wind isn't too bad. It's blowing about 9 knots here out of the northeast, so I'm using my headphones. And I thought, I was going to put together a PowerPoint, and then I realized the technology that I'm using, it's very difficult to share that kind of stuff. And I have the real thing right in front of me. So I thought what I would do is talk a little bit, introduce myself a little bit, talk about the ship, and then show you guys around physically. So bear with me. I'll be moving around. I'll be moving the iPad a little bit. I'll try and keep it smooth enough. If anyone wants to ask any questions, even during the presentation, I'm more used to that also, or you can wait till the end. It doesn't matter to me. Typically, when I show schools around the ship, it's obviously in person. So this is, these conditions are new for everyone. So I hope we'll get some good information to y'all. And, so I'm looking forward to it. It's a beautiful day. I'm downtown Charleston Harbor. See if I can't show you guys just kind of the physical around here. So we are docked at the Charleston Maritime Center, which is just south of the aquarium. You can see the Ravenel Bridge behind me over my shoulder. I believe I have the best view in town, especially for office work. The entire harbor with the USS Yorktown behind me. You can see Castle Pinckney and Fort Sumter. All the ships coming in and out all the time. It's kind of a nice space to be, stuck in quarantine if we had to be. So yeah, my name's Captain Dan Cleveland. I became a captain about 2015. I've been sailing on traditional sailing ships since early 2008. So I've been doing it for most of my adult life. I'm 32 years old. I hold a 200-ton ocean master's license is what they call it. And that means I can sail a boat up to 200 registered tons anywhere in the world, basically, as the captain or an officer. Spirit of South Carolina is a replica ship. She's 140 feet long, and she's registered at 89 tons. So you could even captain her with a 100-ton license, which is a lot of captains that run the tour boats here in town have. She was built right here, downtown Charleston. Some of you may or may not know her history. When we go below on the tour, I've got some great visual aids out about her construction, her launching, and her mission, which we'll touch in a little bit later as well. But if you guys have ever come down to the aquarium or the Fort Sumter building, Gadsboro Park is now a recreational park right across the street here from Washington Street. And she was constructed right there. The keel, which is the backbone, the first piece of wood that the ship was built out of, was built in 2003. And then construction was stalled for a little while due to funding, and then she was built and launched in 2007 and started operating out of Charleston Harbor in 2008. She put over 10,000 high school and middle school kids through her program in the first couple of years, partnering with a lot of local high schools, local middle schools. It was really neat. It was before I joined. And she does programs in the harbor, out of the harbor, abroad. Since my time with being with Spirit of South Carolina, we have been to 7 different countries in the Caribbean, the beautiful island of Bermuda, all the way up and down the eastern seaboard, and Canada, and then all the way up into Quebec City, so the St. Lawrence Seaway, which even in June has ice and balloons. It's quite cold. Not my favorite weather. But she's a far and wide-reaching vessel with a lot of opportunity for young people and honestly people of all ages benefit from sailing these ships. A little bit of her history. She was built here, I said that, but she was built mostly out of local grown woods, low country woods, just like the ship that was built in Charleston would have been back in the day. So longleaf yellow pine, which if you guys drive in state, very much all you'll see everywhere are tall, skinny trees with a great canopy. We farm them a lot for construction. It's a great maritime wood. It's fairly rot resistant, very strong for its weight. A lot of live oak, which are obviously those beautiful twisted trees here in the low country. A lot of cypress because it's very rot resistant and good in a lot of different types of waters. And then of course we have some prettier woods like teak for all of our varnish work, all the bright work you can see. And our deck is teak as well. And those are all great maritime woods. So she's a well-constructed ship. She was built by a crew of professional shipwrights and then a huge community of volunteers, which we still utilize to this day. We have about 20 of our old volunteer crew that still come around, quite a few new people that give us a hand, whether it's maintenance or sailing. Our volunteer program today has training modules so they can actually become professional sailors and work with us on programs when we do student sailing as well. So it's a pretty good time. Obviously, with all the social distancing right now, we're a scarce crew. We're called a skeleton crew, so we're trying to keep the ship safe, keep the virus away from the shipkeeper. I have a crew member who's usually our cook who's living aboard, taking care of the vessel right now, and the mate and a deckhand and I still come down and take care of her throughout the week. You know, again, it's not a bad place to be tied to the dock, and we're still able to take care of this fine vessel. We'll get back up and running soon. So a little bit of the history behind us. You guys want to take a tour? Does that sound good? Walk around the ship. And again, while I'm walking around, if anybody chimes in, that's totally fine. It doesn't stop the presentation. It's just how these things work anyway. So right now I'm on the weather deck, as you can probably hear, and I'm outside, you can see. And I'm standing kind of right in the middle of the ship. We call it the waist. I'm going to see if I can't flip my camera around here and be able to show, instead of my beautiful face, the rest of the ship. So looking aft right now, that's looking astern, looking to the back of the boat. You can see I'm standing kind of in the middle. That's our main mast. That's our biggest mast there that carries our largest sail. And then as I turn around, you'll see the docks that we're tied to. That's the gangway, how we board, get up and down off the ship and onto the dock. And butterfly hatches here allow a lot of sunlight to go down below. We'll see what the salon is what we call it, looks like soon. Another hatch there. That's a hatch that takes you down to the forecastle, which is a living space for sailors. And now we're looking forward. There's the foremast leading up. They're about 75 feet tall off the water, so we're a pretty large vessel. Then underneath this canvas cover is a life raft. Up to the bow here, this is called the foredeck. We've got two anchors. These are very traditional anchors. Fisherman hooks are what they're called in seaman terms. We've got two of them, one on either side. And the anchor windlass here, which is how we operate our anchors. One thing I failed to mention in the beginning is Spirit of South Carolina is incredibly traditional. We do have engines, but they're literally considered our auxiliary power. She's licensed as an auxiliary sailing vessel. The auxiliary is actually the engines, not the sails. Everything on board is handled by hand and people power. This anchor windlass, and both of our anchors are 500 pounds each, is a hand crank windlass. So what you have to do is actually stick big heavy bars right in here, and it's much easier to show in person, but you pump it kind of like those old rail cars that you would see in movies, guys going up and down the rail, pumping back and forth, and you're going to hoist hundreds and hundreds of feet of that anchor chain right there. And then when you finally get done with that, you've still got 500 pounds of anchor to lift up out of the mud. And if anybody's done much boating down here in the low country, they know we have really good mud. So it can be quite heavy. The reason that these vessels are rigged so traditionally, out there forward is the jib. This is called the staysail or jumbo. They have sail covers on them right now to protect them from the sunlight. The reason these vessels are built so traditionally and not utilizing winches or windlasses or electric power aid is because the whole point of sailing on these vessels is in order to kind of create teamwork. You know, there's almost nothing on this vessel that you can do alone. I just want to show you a close-up here. This is the foresail, and it's struck and furled. But this sail, when set, this is the gaff. It's a spar that carries the sail. When this goes up, It weighs about 3,000 pounds. And the only way you pull on it is with traditional ropes, block and tackle. Again, there's no winch or windlass. So what ends up happening is we all line up down the deck right behind me in a big old line. It takes as many people as we can. I think the smallest amount of crew I've ever done to set this sail was probably 6, and we were green in the face before it was done. So it requires a large group of people. To give you a perception of that, when we do day sails, public harbor sails around the Charleston Harbor area, we can sail with 44 passengers, and we put every single one of them on the halyards, which are the lines that hoist these sails in order to help us go sailing. So it's a great environment for building teamwork. It's a great environment for learning how to be a tight-knit community. I always like to say that shipmates have been kind of the closest friends I've ever created in my life. And it really has a lot to do with what you end up going through together. There's no choice but to make it work. And if you don't quite get along with your buddy who's next to you and working with you, you kind of have to get over it. And so a lot of times, one of the things you learn more than sailing on these ships is really how to be a good shipmate, a good member of the community, and teamwork. A few more details about her tradition, her traditionality. This is her rigging here. Now, if any of you have any experience sailing on sailing boats, a lot of times what you'll see is mechanical ways of tightening the rigging. And this ladder-like structure is called a shroud. It's the rigging that holds the masts up. You'll see that our masts actually rake aft a little bit. They're angled back like that. That's for further support so you can utilize less rigging. But our rigging setup is super traditional. They've been doing it this exact same way since the 19th century. These are called lanyards, these ropes. These blocks are called dead eyes. The ropes rove through them, and then we grease them, and we use pulleys, block and tackle, not unlike this one right here, in order to tension it and tighten it all up. And it's a bit of a science, a bit of an art, and it's old wire. This is wire rope that we then wrap with other rope and paint it so that it stays weatherproof. These are wire seizings that hold these two pieces of wire together. As you can see, it dead ends right there. Does anybody have any questions about that? I know it's a little strange to try and do through Zoom, but these are also rigged up so you can climb them. That's what those ropes are. So you got to go all the way up there from time to time. But don't worry, it's not too dizzy. Would anybody be interested in climbing on the ship? We do it all the time. We have to do it for maintenance. We have to do it for fouling something if something got caught up in the rigging, things like that. So remember how I pointed out the foresail? That's that sail up there. This is the mainsail. It's about a third larger than the foresail, so it's actually almost 4,000 pounds when hoisted. And you can see the block and tackle there, or pulley system, one there, and another one there. It takes 3 different pulley systems to set these sails. So it's quite a bit of work. It takes a lot of teamwork. It takes a lot of communication. That's something that you got to work together on really effectively in order to do it safe and efficient. A few other rigging details that are interesting. These are mast hoops. Again, very traditional. You can build these in your own shop, but they're either ash or oak, and they're laminated. They're actually stripped wood, real thin pieces, and then you wrap them in circles. And they're actually what slide up and down the mast in order to carry the sail up and down the mast. You can see the canvas here is actually seized to the mast hoops. Everything's done with ropes. There's very few mechanical attachments on the ship. We don't have, wire zip ties and things like that very often. We're doing a lot of traditional rigging work here. You probably noticed some safety equipment around the vessel. Of course, we are a certified U.S. Coast Guard licensed sailing ship. So one of the things that we have to maintain is our safety equipment, life rafts, life rings. We have what are called the emergency position indicating radio beacons. We have modern navigation equipment. We even have Wi-Fi when we've got the Verizon bill turned on, and we can use Wi-Fi up to 60 miles offshore, which is really nice for student programs. So we're maxed out with our ability to have technology as a traditional ship, but we keep a lot of the regular functions of the vessel very, very old school. For example, steering the vessel happens right here. I'm in the cockpit. I'm underneath an awning, so a little bit of shade. So this is the helm. It is a direct drive system to the rudder. There's no autopilot. There's no hydraulics. There's no wire system. It's actually called a worm drive gear, and it's a direct drive screw that goes. It's actually not very physically difficult. Right now, we've got it locked down because of the seaway, but one person can stand here and steer the ship. A very common question I get is, why is the wheel on backwards? It's actually not. It's just a very traditional system. In this box is the gear system that connects directly to the rudder. So the way you actually would steer, come back here, stand next to or astride the helm, and look forward and steer like this. Now, you can see it's very difficult to see what's in front of you from back here. And because of that, when I'm piloting the vessel around the harbor or offshore, we always maintain a forward lookout, is what we call it. It's a type of watch system. And I'll get into the watch system in a little bit. Somebody's always got to be awake, navigating the vessel and keeping her safe, even if we're at anchor. Right in front of me, make sure you guys can see this okay. This is the traditional compass. This is the ship's binnacle. And inside this little helmet, we call it the astronaut helmet, which is just a silly term for it, keeps the compass safe from water. This is how I give directions to any crew member, passenger, or volunteer who's sailing the vessel. So very traditional system. Giving it in degrees or giving it in cardinal points, and that's how we stay on course. Up here on the starboard side is some of that modern technology I was talking about earlier. This is a general, pretty common Raymarine chart plotter. It's an electronic chart plotter. This is actually kind of a new installation. It's touchscreen. Look at that. And this gives us all kinds of up-to-date, constant information. In fact, one of the cool things is called automatic identification system. So you guys see all these little green boats? Those vessels are currently maneuvering in the harbor. And if I wanted to find out more information about them, I just click on it like that. And I get who they are, how fast they're going, where they're going. I can even sometimes get their ultimate destination. And that makes it easy for us to contact each other and avoid collision or any accidents. You would think boats out in the middle of the ocean wouldn't have any problems not hitting each other, but communication is key in that world as well. And we have, this is water under the keel, so that's the depth of water. The boat itself draws, that's the word for it, 11 feet in the water. And by draw, I just mean how much ship is underneath the water. So we've got 17 more feet of water after that 11 before we were to sit in the mud. This is an anemometer, so it's giving us wind speed and direction. Right now it's blowing about 13 knots, and right behind us on the quarter, so that's northeast breeze. I mentioned that we had an engine system. We do. We, in order to get in and out of the harbor, if there's no wind or if we have a schedule, having trouble getting there on time. And it also makes docking the vessel much easier. I don't have to sail, which is doable, but it definitely constrains the kind of programs you can run. We have twin Cummins 230 horsepower engines, and I'll take you guys into the engine room soon as well. But this is where I would pilot the ship from if I was using the engines. These are my throttles. So two propellers, two engines, forward, reverse, fairly simple. Not unlike most your power boats, you can steer yourself around fairly easily with those two engines. A little bit easier than if I have one. Let's see. I think we can head down below. So I'll start in the aft ship, which is where myself, the chief mate, live. Access to the engine room. The ship can sleep 30 total people. We have 12 bunks in the salon, 16 in the forecastle, and then the 2 back here. Each compartment has a head or restroom and a shower, and a lot of living spaces in between their common areas, which you guys will see when we head down. The aft ship also kind of serves as my office and chart table. So I do a lot of navigation work and ship's office work down there. Just show you down the ladder. Now you'll notice there aren't stairwells or anything like that. These are a little bit more ladders. We treat them like ladders. You actually turn around and put your hands on a handhold when you go down. This is something we have to illustrate for folks when they first come aboard. So I'll just do it the way we're supposed to. There are 2 entrances and exits to every compartment. That's a Coast Guard requirement for safety, for ingress and egress. It's very important. On top of that safety equipment, check it out. We've got a fire axe. It's actually Coast Guard required. Every bunk has a life jacket, and that orange sack you see back there is called an immersion suit. It's specifically for cold water emergencies. It will keep you from getting hypothermia. Every ship should have a barometer, gives you air pressure, tells you when you might be heading into stormy weather. And now ship's clock, which I think is actually not wound up. We have a library in every living space. This one back here is mostly for professional navigation, texts, and a few education documents. Ship's radios and binoculars. This is an offshore medical kit required both by the Coast Guard and common sense. When you're 100 miles from shore, you got to take care of yourself. Same goes for fires and anything on the ship. So a lot more office related information, navigation text. The ship keeps logs on absolutely everything. I have to not only have the regular ship's log, which every hour, half hour says where we are with latitude and longitude. It says, hey, we just saw dolphins. I have to log in a separate log that I've radioed another boat and had a conversation with them to establish, say, a passing arrangement in order to avoid collision. If I'm asking for weather information from a ship with more technology than I have, like weather satellites or something, I have to log all that. I have to log if we throw food scraps over the side, which you're allowed to do after 3 miles offshore. So there's a lot of legal requirements for being a captain. I always tell everybody wants to be a captain. I miss being a chief mate. It's a little bit more fun. So here's the chart table. And this is a really nice workspace. It's hard to see from here, but it's actually angled. So it's a little bit more like a drawing desk. And it helps me. I can sit on this nice leather cushion. And we've got a low country coastal chart here. This is Cape Hatteras and Straits to Florida. And so even though I have all of these electronic charts, this is a navigation, a voyage planning software here. And then that's just a repeater of the chart plotter you saw up on deck. Even though I have all of that equipment, I still teach and utilize paper charts because at any moment we could theoretically, lose the power to those systems. I've actually never had it happen to me, but the redundancy is very important at sea. I mentioned that you kind of have to be able to handle everything yourself. So when we go sailing, I have an engineer. I have usually a crew member. I deem a medical officer who's got more medical training than I do or anyone else on board. We teach each other and train up on firefighting, man overboard drills. We do every month, flooding and abandoned ship, all those kinds of things. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You can't call 911 when you're off the coast. So there's a lot of really cool technical training that goes through, even if you're working on a traditional ship. A few other things around the chart table here. This is our official ship's log. What's written in red are actually drills. I write them in red so the Coast Guard can find them quicker. We're annually inspected. They check all our systems, our safety equipment, our logbook to make sure we're keeping up with it. And the Coast Guard they're really your friend. They take care of a little stamp there. They help us stay not only legal, but also safe. And they're a great resource for mariners. I think some people, when they get into the business, they view them a little bit more like police officers or somebody who's trying to get them in trouble. And that's just not the case. Always take advantage of your local Coast Guard. They're amazing. They've helped me out with so many questions and honestly, they're just good human beings. They're trying to let us all have a really good time. We've got VHF. So this is a required piece of equipment. Everybody has them on their boats, whether it's a center console runabout or a sailboat. And this allows me to get into contact with anyone. 16 is a nationwide channel for emergency search and rescue or hailing other vessels. And then you have to switch channels to talk to anyone else. You go to 13, we'll probably hear some ship-to-ship traffic right now because we've got some boats docking. I've got repetition down here. This is also an anemometer for wind. We've got another depth sounder over there. Those are battery banks, so we don't have to run the generator all the time. This is not on right now, but it's a weather navigation updater. So it gives me text constantly about what kind of weather's coming my way. All legal documents. These are certifications. We have a lot of process to go through in order to be a vessel that's allowed to carry humans out offshore. If you have your own boat, just your own sailboat, you don't have to go through all those steps. If you want people to come sailing with you commercially, or like us being a sailing school, you have to get different types of certifications. It's a big part of my job is maintaining those. But that's why one of the reasons it's more fun to be a chief mate. You just sail the boat and maintain it. This is just a quick spot. This is the aft head. So if any of you have had boating experience, you're probably pretty familiar with these old pump toilets. They're very finicky, but they work just fine if you take care of them. You just do your business and pump them up and down, and they pump into a tank. And you can't empty your tank unless you're a certain amount of miles offshore. This ship has storage everywhere. We've got stuff, but all in little tight spaces. And that's just the way it is on ships. Those are a lot of our engineering supplies in there. And we've got gear kind of everywhere. Over here is the captain's cabin. And frankly, it's actually a mess because I haven't lived in here for a couple months. Give you a glimpse. I actually live in one of the smaller spaces, which is great. It's nice and tight. You don't want to have a big old bunk when you're sailing on these ships. You'll roll right out of it. It's very uncomfortable. So you want to kind of live in a small space. We don't do hammocks on this ship. And it's actually traditional not to have hammocks on a schooner like this type of vessel. There's not a lot of space for it. So our bunks are all what's called pilot berths. And they're actually quite comfortable. So here's the engine room. Also a small space with a lot of stuff in it. And I won't go through everything, but I'm sure there's a few folks that are interested in some of the details of the engine room, so I'll talk about it a little briefly. But it is a small space. Again, here's a secondary exit for this whole living space here. You'll notice we walked through this big steel door. This is called a watertight bulkhead door. So this being the bulkhead here, and that door being there. Any engineering space is typically required to have a watertight door. In a bulkhead between an engineering space. And that just gives you access to the space. But if we were to be flooding for some reason, the last place you want the water to get to is your engines and generators, because then you'll lose power. So here's the starboard engine. Again, Cummins, 230 horsepower. And you can kind of see that, my fingernail, that black shaft there, that's the propeller shaft. So that physically spins while we're under motor power. And the port engine is just a mirror image of it. It gets a little dark back here. You see a myriad of these bronze pipes everywhere. They are all of our raw water plumbing systems. So here, everything you see running, this is our bilge manifold. So what all these pipes do is they run down into the belly of the ship. And if we were to be taking on water for whatever reason, it's a wooden ship, so it's not uncommon that some water is in the bilge because she works and the way the planks are constructed, you're going to get some water. It's completely fine. In fact, if there's no water inside your wooden boat, something else might be wrong. Who knows? But you have the ability to pump it overboard at any time. We have redundancy even in our engineering systems. I have 3 different types of pumps that are installed on the ship that I can use. And I have 2 pumps that are completely mobile. I can drop them in anywhere I want. It's a very simple system, just to pump the boat out if you need to. And then of course the engines have to be cooled, and we cool them with ocean water. Raw water is what we call it. So that's a bronze pipe system. The generator, which is right here, is also powered or cooled by raw water. The generator is also a Cummins block, if anybody is interested in engineering brands. And this can power the entire ship when it's on. And we actually only turn it on 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because the stove and oven and microwave require it, because they're the only things on the ship that can't run off of our fairly extensive battery bank here. So these are all large marine batteries. Trying to get the camera to work there. And I can run everything but what I mentioned before, the galley equipment, off of the batteries. And that's really lovely, because when you turn the engines off and you're sailing the ship, the last thing you want to be listening to is a generator just going on and on. And actually the generator is louder than the engines. So we sail silent for the majority of the day, except for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And while the generator's on and Hunter is cooking, the batteries are charging. So we really don't have to turn it on all night long, unless we needed to use some kind of auxiliary electrical equipment for whatever reason. Also in the engine room is a tight space. We've got, this is exhaust and a protectant for your body, so it doesn't get too hot in here and so you don't burn yourself. But that big white box back there, that's one fuel tank. I'm standing on a fuel tank as well. And then there's one behind the generator. So we carry fuel for all three engines, called a generator and engine, carry about 600 gallons, which is about 200 hours of motoring at a pretty decent clip. These are all fuel filters. We've got a lot of redundancy in our filter systems. These are called ray cores also. And this whole system right here is for polishing fuel. So it's not uncommon that we're sailing in the Caribbean or in places that don't have as high regulations on quality of fuel. Same goes for water. So we have water filters as well. And what I can do is take fuel onto the ship and then run it through this polishing system. And it's really what it does. It just goes back and forth through a bunch of filters before I put it in my tank. And that way I know I don't have water in my fuel. It's very useful. That's a common problem with engines would be if you got water in your fuel. But we don't have that issue, which is really nice. And then we have, last but not least, here in the engine room, this is all of our electronic equipment that's kind of related directly to the engines. And that might just be fun for you guys to hear them, because they're kind of cool and loud. So if you guys have audio on, you'll hear them in a second. If you can hear that whirring, that is the fuel pump. So these engines haven't been on in 5 days, I think. They usually do a weekly system check on them. So the fuel pump takes a minute to get started, run fuel through all of the ignition systems. And then I'll turn the engines on so you can hear them. They're nice purr, actually. Take just a second for it to kick off. And I'll show you, this is what's called my vessel view. And it gives me a lot of diagnostic information about the engines themselves. You got battery information. Don't remind the fuel, it's not calibrated. It's also not negative 57 degrees outside, which is good. Temperatures of the engines, obviously they're cold right now, but let's say we turn them on. So here's the starboard engine. And the port engine. Good. You hear them kind of warming up. Oh, we've been off for so long. Yep. We'll head back up on deck. Ah, beautiful day today. So that same vessel view system is right here on deck as well, so I can see everything I need to see in order to take care of the ship's engines. You always want to check over the side. You guys can see maybe that water pumping out. That's the exhaust. That's very important. If you don't have water coming out the side of your boat when you're ready to run, your engines might overheat. And then these are our throttle systems. So I can run these up. You can watch the throttle go up and down. You can hear them run. And these motors were donated. It was a lovely gift during the construction of the ship. They were actually given to the vessel. I'm not sure if it was through a donation or if Cummins itself did it. And they are just lovely engines. They were brand new in 2006, and they have done me no wrong. It's really great. A few other things on deck while we're heading around. I'm going to go down to the salon in a second. Is these vent boxes here have a lot of equipment in them. That's our ship's horn. See how big that thing is? It's so loud, especially when you're standing here. And there's fuel vents, and this is an access right now. We've got some maintenance supplies sitting in here. But if there was a fire in the engine room, one of the things that you can do is shut off oxygen to the engine room, which if you guys have learned much about firefighting or fire protection, the oxygen is one of the fuels, major fuels for fire. So you can see down into the engine room here, but this thing can shut, and I put a cap over it. And it's just one of the many, many ways we can fight fires on the boat. We have fire hoses. We have a fire pump, emergency pumps for that. We can take water right out of the ocean and pour it on the fire. We've got fire extinguishers everywhere. We've got fire blankets. The cook keeps baking soda in jars for grease fires, and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of redundancy there to keep us safe. So now I'm going to head down into the main salon, which is also where the galley or the kitchen is, and some living spaces, and it'll give you a better idea of what life aboard is really like for the trainees, the students. Again, heading down the ladders here. Those fire extinguishers. You see a lot of plumbing. This is all for the heads, the showers. Freshwater plumbing is actually under my feet. There's a backboard in case someone gets injured. And then here's the main mast. It comes all the way down through the deck of the ship and all the way down to the keel below us as well. Just because it's easier to see here. It's a laminate, so this is not one big tree cut down. These are built. It's not hollow. It's a solid mast, but these are all pieces of wood glued together and then shaped into a mast. It's a good way to do it. It lets you know there's no rot inside the tree. And this is the main salon. This is kind of like any good home. The kitchen is sort of where we like to hang out. This is definitely one of our nicer spaces, a little bit more open area to hang out in if the weather's kind of bad. And then these are those pilot berths. So this is the bunk space that folks would have if they lived here. They're about 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. We have battery powered fans in each one, shelving system back there for your personal gear. If we are fully staffed and fully participated in with guests, you have to live with your stuff. It's a small area. It's kind of like bougier camping than tent camping. It's a little bit more comfortable than that. Obviously, you're not in the elements all the time. But typically, sailors come aboard and guests come aboard with a backpack and a large duffel bag full of gear, and that's all they need. You'd be surprised how little you need at sea. I recommend books, but you're often a little busy. Some people like to say, are you bored at sea? There's always something to do, but there is enough downtime that reading and enjoying your own personal space is really nice. One part of etiquette aboard ships, and this is ship-wide, doesn't matter if it's a tall ship, a traditional ship, a tugboat, your personal space is your personal space. No one, not even the captain, is going to come enter your personal space without your permission, unless there's obviously something wrong, like an emergency. And so it's nice. It's a little haven for yourself. So this is the main salon table. It's got all the space for eating. Usually about eight people can sit at this table at the same time. It's kind of nice. Another library up there. Hot sauces and condiments. Big old fan. And then this is where the magic happens. So my cook, Hunter, which you might see, I think he's on deck right now before this is all over. He's been doing this for about 30 years. He's a master at it, and mostly on training ships, tall ships. So he doesn't just cook and clean for folks. We've got all the modern amenities, 6-range burner, all that fancy stuff. Sorry about the sunlight there. Freezer storage, refrigerator storage, food stores. All of these bunks have food stores. Sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit there with Hunter. So a sea chef on a training ship is also a teacher. Our students take part in every aspect of the vessel. I was going to get more into that in a little bit once we went back on deck, but they take part in everything, including the cooking and cleaning with the chef. And that's actually not uncommon even in non-training ships. A lot of times sailors are on watch and have to go help the cook with different processes, whether whether it's cooking, cleaning, peeling potatoes. You know, see any of the old Navy movies, the old war movies, there's always sailors peeling potatoes. That actually still happens, which is kind of neat. Teaching you the old ways, keeping it alive. Just checked out there for a second. And then again, a head and shower in every space. So sink, head, in the shower, movable shower head, because it's a tight space, but it's really not that bad. It's a Ralph Lauren posters for some reason, and a mirror so you can look at your ugly mug. I wanted to show some pieces of history while I'm here. These are newspaper clippings, and I don't have these digitally, or else I would have sent them up forward with you. But this is a lot of like a layout of the vessel. It's hard to see her full layout from on board the ship, but this is kind of a neat old paper clipping after her construction was finished to give you kind of the layout. So we were back here, the cockpit, the helm, the binnacle, give you an overview. And we head down into the navigation station right here. That's where I live, and that's where we went through that watertight door into the engine compartment. Sorry, the camera was lined up with my finger as well. And we came back up on deck, again, mainsail and mainmast, and then now we're down here in the salon. That'll give you just kind of an overview of the spaces we just. I'm not going to go down to the forecastle today where there's 16 bunks. It's really just a carbon copy of the salon, just a little bit tighter because it's got more bunks. But right now, it's been emptied out for deep cleaning, so it's just kind of boring. And there's the bow and the anchor windlass. That's an emergency hatch. Also, again, every compartment has two ingress spaces or egress spaces. This is a neat little rendering of her under sail. And this is a really great photo of her actually sailing in the harbor in Spirit, South Carolina. And an older black and white photo of her sailing around. And then this is one of my favorites. This was just her launch. So big old crane barge. A truck took her over to the water, and the crane barge picked her up and dropped her in. And we started rigging her. It's pretty sweet. Glasses, huh? So 12 bunks again, 6 on either side, personal spaces for all the crew. Right now we've only got one or two living aboard. Myself, I live down the street, which is nice. I can be here in 5 minutes on a bicycle. Get back up on deck. Back in the beautiful sunshine. A few things I could have talked about while looking at those pictures, but I prefer to do it up on deck, is Spirit of South Carolina is a very accurate portrayal of a historical type of ship that used to be constructed here in South Carolina, Charleston Harbor area. She was constructed after a vessel called Francis Elizabeth. Francis Elizabeth was a pilot schooner. And if you guys come down to the harbor very often, you've probably seen, sorry, is there? Oh, hold on. Lost y'all for a second. I apologize for that. Everybody hear me okay? You hear me all right, Jason? Okay. So you've probably seen a lot of the big ships coming in and out of the harbor, the cargo vessels and things like that. In order for ships like the cruise ships including, in order for ships like that to enter and exit the harbor, they have to use what's called a pilot. And nowadays, it's a government entity, kind of a hard job to get. It requires a lot of skill and training. It's usually kind of a family business nowadays too, like it used to be. But a pilot is a master mariner trained for local water specifically. They know a ton about the harbor, the currents, the danger zones, et cetera, et cetera. And they go out and they meet a large ship, they board that ship, and then they sail it in with the captain. And it's a requirement just to keep the harbor safe. Those vessels are very difficult to maneuver. They take a long time to slow down, et cetera, et cetera. So they always have a pilot. Well, back in the 20th century, Francis Elizabeth, which is just one of many pilot schooners here at Charleston Harbor, it was a competitive business. You still had to be a well-trained, capable mariner. One of the things that you would do is anybody who had a very fast and capable the schooner and was a good mariner would compete to sail and race out to a big ship that needed to be guided into the harbor safely. And basically the first one there to the ship got the job, got the paycheck, and sailed the ship in order for the ship to safely offload its cargo. And Frances Elizabeth was one of the most successful in the early 1900s, late 1800s. I believe she was built in 1892 and operated up until before the First World War. And unfortunately, she was changed over to a gasoline engine, and she had an engine fire, and she burned and sank. When Charleston Maritime Heritage Fund that built Spirit of South Carolina was thinking about building a training ship so they could bring youth out to sea in a tall ship. They actually found Frances Elizabeth's plans, drawings, and information at the Smithsonian. And so they decided to use her in order to copy her and make her a little bit larger. She was a 100-foot vessel. This is a 140-foot vessel to accommodate more students. And that's kind of a neat connection to the Charleston Harbor history that I don't think a lot of people realize Spirit of South Carolina actually has. Even though they're technically a newer construction, her spirit is very traditional. And so our mission in life here with Spirit of South Carolina is to be both an ambassador for Charleston around the world and in other states in the nation, but also mostly to get students from the Low Country area and abroad sailing and on the water. We do a myriad of interdisciplinary experiences. I've done everything with the ship from full semesters at sea in the Caribbean with college students. We spent 90 days with the Citadel and 15 of their cadets down in the Caribbean. And that was all an education program run by the faculty. It was an international business, overall it was international business focus. And in the meantime, basically, they learned what it's like to be part of a tight-knit community, the teamwork requires to be on the ship, and of course, how to sail a vessel. It's interesting, you get some students that are like, man, the mariner skills, the teaching, the sailing, that is really cool. I've had students who join a vessel, sail to Bermuda for a school trip, and then call me up 2 years later saying they'd like to become a mariner. They'd like to learn how it is to become a mariner. And that's not for everyone, of course, but it's a really neat experience, and it's kind of what happened to me. We do marine science experiences and sales. I've done programs with as young as 13-year-olds, scout trips where we actually just take them to some pretty cool places and go camping. We have a 17-foot sailing vessel. It's called a dory that I built with my crew. I taught my crew and some students how to build it. It's a small wooden sailing boat. We take it with us. So when we're at anchor in port, we can also teach small boat sailing, which is really fun. It's the highlight of most of the crew and students' experiences on board the ship. And and we've done programs that are also specifically just mariner skills. I've worked with maritime academies, doing trips with their students. And the majority of what we do is youth programs where we try and get everyone out on the water, a little bit of history, a lot of teamwork, and kind of community building. Shoot. Sorry, guys. So I have a case so I can go hands-free, and every time I pop it in there, it turns my iPad off. So I apologize for that. Again, the technological disparities of working on an 18th century vessel, 19th century vessel. So I like to say a 19th century vessel with 19th century wages and 20th century headaches. So it's always a good time. Let me see what else a little bit about Spirit. I guess from a technical aspect, the accommodations of 30 people overall. Typically, we sail with 15 to 20 students, 10 professionals from myself down. When you come aboard, there's an orientation period. If you're on for a couple of months, it's going to be longer. We'll spend a few days here at the dock still learning a lot of things, getting you accustomed to what life aboard is like, what the rules are. And the rules are for safety, really. I mean, it's, you're not running around, stubbing your toe. You're not leaning on the cap rail, you'll fall overboard. We do drills with all of our students pretty immediately after they join. And just the living etiquette. When you're underway, there's a 3-watch system. It can seem kind of complicated, but it's really very simple. You stand 4 hours on deck twice a day in order to navigate the ship while she's underway. And you rotate with the crew members. You're standing at the wheel, steering the ship for 1 hour. You're standing on the bow, doing forward lookout, making sure that we don't run into anything for 1 hour. You do what's called boat checks, which is literally what it sounds like. You walk around the whole ship and make sure nothing's flooding or on fire or busted that no one noticed. That happens all the time. And then there's also the standby positions for any other extra crew members. We've got the ability to rotate at every meal. So you'll eat breakfast and come to watch at 8 until noon. And that's your watch. And then you're done. You don't have to do anything again until 8 p.m. Unless there's bad weather or maintenance that has to be done. But typically there's a lot of rest at sea. Staying well rested at sea is very important, especially for new beginners. Though the motion of the boat sometimes is hard for folks to figure out how to fall asleep. It takes a couple days to get used to it. You'd be surprised that not a lot of people get seasick. It's not as common as you think. But if you do, rest is really the best thing you can do for it. So we don't push it. I'm not forcing folks to stand watch and then do maintenance and then stand watch again. I like that everybody stays well rested. And then there's a 12 to 4 p.m. watch, and then there's a 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. watch, and then they start over again. So you are up in the nighttime and the daytime, but really it's an 8-hour workday for the most part. And then there's ample time for student schoolwork in the afternoon, especially when the weather's nice. And then obviously a lot of our destinations are picked specifically for the curriculum that we're working with. As of now, in the recent history of Spirit of South Carolina, what we've been doing is basically partnering with educational institutions and focusing on what their goals are. So instead of students coming to Spirit of South Carolina and Spirit of South Carolina doing it the Spirit of South Carolina way or teaching what our mission is, our main goal is really partnering with other educational institutions. And then they come to us and say, hey, we really want to give our kids an experiential education opportunity. This is the curriculum that we would like to teach. And is that possible? We deliver typically quite successfully. It's a very flexible environment. Really the weather is the only thing that makes us have to change what we planned on doing in the first place. And usually it's never a change for the worse. It's like, God, I can't go to Bermuda today, but I can go in 2 days. Okay, so it's not so bad. Check my notes, make sure I didn't really miss anything off the top of my head.
Captain Dan, I'm gonna have to interject a little bit.
Of course, Jason.
You this should be a mini series because this is a little bit too good, and we're about to crash into our time limit.
Oh no, I didn't even.
I know.
We are. Look at that. I didn't realize I spoke for so long. I'm sorry.
No, it was fabulous. Is it okay if you take maybe one question and then hopefully we'll be able to have you back and talk about the dory and all that other stuff that we weren't able to get into this time?
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry that took a little bit longer than I expected. I've never done it over the phone before. Yes, please. Any questions? And if you're running out of time, also before you leave, I could give you my email, and I know you have it, Jason. But the students.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, please feel free to share.
Kendra, I see you've got a question for Captain Dan. And there you're unmuted.
You said you usually run completely off of the sails, right?
Yes, as much as possible. I'm very much a traditionalist.
So how strong does the wind have to be for the sails to work?
Well, I'll tell you, it's pretty simple. If there's no current, if I'm not stuck in the Gulf Stream or a tidal zone or something like that, she can actually sail pretty well in light breezes. I would say if it's blowing at least 5 knots, I can get the boat moving and maneuver it safely how I need to. And if the sea state is rough and it's that light of a wind speed, it's pretty uncomfortable. The boat kind of logs around a lot, but it's doable. And if there's a decent breeze, she typically will sail half the wind speed. So if it's blowing 20, we'll do 10, maybe better if there's no.
Captain Dan, you're really good at this, by the way. Handling the technology and taking us through the ship. And if it's okay, I know that I'm going to share your email address, but we'd love to have you back for this in the future to build on this. That would be really great.
Absolutely, and yes, please share my email if there's any other questions I can get to them. And I do have PowerPoints that I can make up, use. I think I've got an old one that a volunteer did that's really, really awesome, and I could send those. I think with my iPad, I just can't utilize them all also on the Zoom.
You're way better than a PowerPoint.
Thanks.
That's really good.
Well,
That was really
nice being. Well, hopefully we can get you all down to the ship when this all blows over and you can see it for real.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. The school went 3 times in the first 5 years, but then in recent years we have not. But looking forward to it. I want to thank you for today, and Taylor Harris for the Convention Center and Visitor Bureau for helping pull this together. What a wonderful morning. And Dan, thanks for the good work you're doing for the Spirit of South Carolina. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, thank you guys all. Everyone have a lovely rest of your day. Stay healthy, stay safe. Jason, thank you so much. Taylor, thank you so much. Y'all have a lovely day.
It was a pleasure. All right, everybody, goodbye. We'll see you in a little bit.
Bye.
Take care.